good morning. Welcome into episode 1 of the Side Sermon Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Mueller. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that I am dressed closer to my avatar that is a part of the logo for the Side Sermon Podcast because I am all dressed up and ready to head to work. So hope everybody's doing well this morning. I really appreciate I got some good feedback already from the introduction to the podcast that was posted yesterday. So if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to pause this one, go back to the introduction just to have a feel for what is coming and what to expect. One of the things that was interesting, and this is not me advocating for it yet because I haven't done enough research, but someone actually brought up the AND campaign, which talks about the biblical values and social justice and how those things can come together and be together. And that's something that obviously from the first episode, or the introduction episode, I kind of made important, is that I don't think those things are separate. I actually think the biblical principles are pretty much in line with care for other people, right? I think that's a pretty blunt thing. So I still am looking through kind of who they are, what they are. Much like everything really in society right now is we don't always know everything, right? There are people that will say things that we find interesting or even have a really good website that has some good information on it. And then as we dig deeper, we find out that they've been involved in this, that, or the other. And so I don't want to assume everything about the AND campaign is great, but it was definitely something that I was appreciative that someone sent to me after listening to the introductory episode of the Side Sermon Podcast. So anyway, so here we're going to roll right in. Again, the goal is that these are 15 to 20 minutes. Yesterday I went 22. Let's see if I can not do that today. And again, today's episode is going to be about priorities. So on YouTube, you see kind of at the bottom, episode 1, priorities. And I think that's just a really good place to start. When we think about where we are in life, in our individual our individual lives, our society, our country, across the board, priorities seem to be very clear for a lot of people. Often I tell people you can tell what is important to you by your calendar and your checkbook. And I'm not unique. I didn't make that up. I'm sure I've heard that many places, but I think that's a really good way of understanding what your priorities are, is what is on your calendar. And maybe you aren't the person that keeps a calendar, but how is your time spent? If someone followed you around marking how you spent your time, what would they think is important? I think that's a good way to understand what is important in your life and how you're doing things. I think the second thing is really your checkbook. It's how you spend your money, right? Now, that doesn't always mean, what percentage or any of those kind of things, but what are you consistently spending money on? What are some of your big purchases? Those kind of things. Those are ways for you and I to understand what our priorities are and kind of get a grip on those. I want to kind of share with you what I think is a good way to prioritize things. And again, I am not pretending, A, that I'm right, that there is a right way to go about this, and B, I'm not pretending that I'm perfect or anywhere near perfect. Again, when I'm talking to you and when I'm talking on this podcast, I'm talking to myself, right? I'm talking to past Jared, future Jared, friends of Jared, those of you who never met me. I'm talking to all of you. And so it's important to me that I make sure that's clear, and I'll probably make it clear most episodes, is that this isn't a thing where I think I've got this all together. I may have the concepts down. I may understand what I need to do, but I'm a complete and utter failure in most of these things and working hard at it. But I think that's the starting place, right? Is knowing what you want to do, knowing what's important to you, and then working on it and getting better. So when I think of priorities, I have a very clear way of thinking about how we prioritize things. And that is very simply my needs, other people's needs, my wants, other people's wants. So my needs come first. The reality is much like an adult and a child on a plane, the adult needs to first put on their mask if something happens in the sky and then help the child. Well, the reality is that if my needs aren't taken care of, if I am sacrificially allowing or pushing other people to get their needs met first, and I'm not getting my needs met, I might short-term help them, but long-term, I'm going to be no good to them because I'm not getting my needs met. Okay? And so, first and foremost, your needs are very, very important. And so when we talk about priorities, first we have to really understand what is a need. And again, I'm not going to pretend like there is a right way to define a need, right? We all have certain needs. We all need water, which I'm going to take a sip of right now. We all need some kind of nutrition. We all need some kind of housing, right? We all need some kind of, I'll use the word income, but it could be, it doesn't have to be as simple as that, but we have to be able to get the water, get the food, get the housing, those kind of things. So we have some very basic needs, but for other people, there are needs like socialization, right? As a very extroverted person, I have an absolute need for socialization. When I don't have it, and COVID has played a role in this, when I don't have it, my energy levels go down, depression is a bigger issue, and those kind of things. For other people, you can look at the 5 love languages, right? And those define your needs, right? In relationships, and whether that's intimate relationships, friendships, whatever it is, those love languages can be really, really important, and those things can be considered needs. And again, your list of needs and my list of needs may be different. But if we can be really honest, I don't need a bigger house. I don't need a better car. I don't need the best food in the world, right? Now, I like it, right? I want those things, but I don't need them. I don't need $1 million. I don't need $1 billion, right? I don't need. Now, again, for some of you, based on lifestyle, based on decisions you've already made, house payments, car payments, whatever, there may be a need for that, right? There may be a need for a certain amount of money. But if we often think of, if I get my needs met first, and then how can I meet the needs of others? And I'm going to be really clear about this. I talked about it in an introduction. When I talk about the needs of others, when I talk about others, just know that I'm not talking about everyone. Because the reality is, in the musical movie Hamilton, Hamilton actually talks about it in a debate with Thomas Jefferson. He talks about if we fought in every war for freedom, we'd never stop. Well, it's kind of the same thing. If we're talking about serving other people's needs, well, there's always needy people. Here's where I would say we can focus our help on other people's needs. Who's in your life, right? Who are the people in your life whose needs you can help meet? Now, those people may be people you know directly, or it could be related to your community. And so whatever that looks like, but it's not about you fulfilling everyone's needs after you fulfill your own. It's about fulfilling the needs of people that are around you and whatever kind of relationships those are, whether that's work, whether that's community, whether that's the McDonald's worker when you pull through for your coffee or your breakfast or whatever that is. It's all about the people you're connected to at some level. And so it's not about, I got my needs met, then I got to spend all my money or all my time on other people. No, that's not it. Because the reality is that your family, your friends, your coworkers, those people are a part of your lives, and those people have needs that they need met as well. Okay, so again, it's first your needs, then other people's needs, and then it's your wants. Listen, the reality is that if you have the ability to get your wants met, whether that want is a 25-cent pack of gum, or that want is a $400,000 house or car, a vacation, whatever it is, if you have the ability to meet your own needs, meet the needs of those around you, then meeting the wants that you have are important. The reality is that at times it's important to make sure you fill your wants, because that can be a driving force, and we all deserve to enjoy life at some level, to the level that we can. And so this isn't pretending that pleasure, joy, like the reality is God gave us the opportunity to do all of those kinds of things and wants us to enjoy things, right? God made food good. The blunt statement about food is this: we eat to nourish ourselves. Okay? That is the goal of eating. Cows eat grass to nourish themselves. It's only a blessing that God allows our food to taste good. That's just a blessing. The reality is when things don't, quote unquote, taste good, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be eating them. And that being a priority can be a problem for a lot of people. But you should be able to get your wants met at some level, right? Get that thing of ice cream. Get those cool shoes. But again, it's all about priorities. We're talking about this as a third thing, right? After your needs, after the needs of others, Then comes your wants. And then comes their wants. Listen, if you want to help other people get experiences that maybe they can't afford or they never had an opportunity to, like, more power to you, right? One of the statements I make often to, especially to my coworkers, is, if I can, I will. All right, it's the reality that if they have something they need or want, if I can, I will. If I can't, I won't, and I won't feel bad about it. But if a family member, a friend, whatever, needs something, I will do everything I can to meet that need. If they want something, I still will do what I can to meet that want. Now, for sometimes that's, again, buying a bag of chips for somebody because they want it and I just happen to be at a store. Sometimes that's driving out of your way to go to something 3 hours away to even drive back 3 hours later. If I can, I will. Right? It's an attitude towards other people that they are important in our lives. And so again, needs, my needs, others' needs, my wants, others' wants. And I think, one of the areas that I am concerned about in our society, especially in American society, which is the one I know very well, is that oftentimes we tend to teach our kids, we teach people that what they need to do with their life generally comes down to what makes them money, right? And there's always this kind of balancing act of what I would consider poor decision making of one extreme or the other. So there's what makes the most money, or what makes good money is a priority, or what makes you happy, right? And so neither one of those, to be blunt, are the best place for anybody to be. If I just do things that make me money, make me good money, if that's my priority, is I have the choice between two types of future careers and I choose the one that makes more money, then I'm going to always be chasing the almighty dollar, right? I'm always going to be looking at things in decision makings from a money perspective. Now, money is important. Money helps me get my needs met, helps me meet the needs of others, and helps me the wants as well, right? But there's a quote in the movie Wall Street Money Talks. And Shia LaBeouf is talking to one of the main characters, and Shia says something. He asked the question. He said, "What's your number?" The guy's like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "I've met people, and everybody has a certain number, a number that their bank account would have to get at, that they would just walk away and just be happy, just retire, whatever." And the guy said, "More." Because the reality is when we prioritize money as our number one reason for making decisions, especially from a career perspective, but in general, when we make it our number one, we'll never be happy because we'll always be looking for more. There's some surveys that say the average person would say they'd be happy and content with $8,000 more income a year. So that means, on average, someone making $30,000 thinks they'll be happy at $38,000, but someone making $40,000 thinks they'll be happy at $48,000, right? So, and so on and so forth. And obviously that changes a little bit as you go up, and that is an average. But the reality is that it speaks to the idea that more is always better. So when we push our kids towards what's going to make money, I think we tend to take away their why, right? The why you do things. Listen, if you go to work today, it's Monday morning. Hopefully this gets published right around 7. If you go to work today and your only why is to make money, and you're not able to find any kind of thing that you're passionate about, whether that's serving customers at McDonald's, whether that's, Fortune 500 CEO and everywhere in between, if you can't find some joy in your why, if you can't find some mission in your work, then I would say, in general, in my 18 years as a mental health professional, you often will struggle. You'll be looking for more money. You'll be looking for a raise. You'll be looking to get ahead. And those things will be your priority, right or wrong. And again, this isn't a judgment on money. Money is important, but money cannot be your number one why. In the same way, I don't think what you love or what makes you happy can always be your number one why either. Because here's the reality. If we all did what made us happy, if we all did what at kindergarten or first grade we were all ninjas or princesses or firefighters or police officers, there would be no McDonald's workers, right? There would be nobody taking my trash. There would be nobody cleaning the offices. There would be no, honestly, there'd probably be no nurses maybe, or phlebotomists, or, certain jobs people wouldn't do if you only were making your decision based on your why, right? Or what you want to do, what makes you happy. Somewhere in the middle is the reality. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing for humans, and the most difficult things for Americans, is to really focus on what's in the middle between what I love to do and what makes me money. Generally speaking, is going to be a healthier thing. I am a mental health professional. My job title is psychotherapist. Here's reality. I would love to just sit around and talk to people. I would. I'd love to train. I'd love to hang out. I'd love to chat. I'd love to even counsel them. What I don't want to always do is get up and be at work by 7:30. What I don't always want to do is have a schedule. What I don't always want to do is documentation. What I don't always want to do is meet with my bosses or go to staff meetings, right? And so somewhere between my passion and making money is the truth. Okay. And so when we talk about priorities, I really think it starts. And again, a lot of this, I want to make sure you're clear about the Side Sermon podcast. A lot of this is going to be a challenging of you as an individual in the midst of a society that does things maybe differently as well. But we have to be able to start where we have power and control, where we have influence, right? And so that's why in the introduction, I talked about your therapeutic web and the influences you have in your life. Those things and those places are really going to be important. Listen, many of us probably cannot change the government, quote unquote, right? We can't affect the man, but what we can affect is our neighbor. We can affect our coworker, right? For the believer, when we talk about priorities, one of the statements that can really kind of hit home is the Scripture talks about they will know us by our love. It doesn't say they'll know us by our big houses. It doesn't say they'll know us because we serve even. It says they will know us by our love, right? And so when we go back to my little priority list, my needs, my wants, your wants. Well, if I'm helping you get your needs filled, that's love, right? Because I'm going to do it out of love. I'm not doing it because someone told me to, some idiot on a podcast told me to. I'm doing it to be obedient, but I'm also doing it out of love, right? My why is very clearly out of love, right? And so, listen, I think the Christian church would be in such better standing in our world if love drove our decision making. And the second one, when we talk about money, and again, I'm not saying money itself is evil, right? Money is the root of all evil is not in the Bible that I'm aware of. Hit me up if I missed it. But it does talk about, we can't have one foot in the world and one foot in heaven, right? You can't be pushing ahead your plow and looking back. Like, that doesn't work. And so, in the American church, I think too many times we think of success as the measure of how good of a Christian we are. We think of worldly success as a measure of how good of a Christian we are, but there is nothing scriptural about money equaling Christian success, right? There's so many things about having faith the size of a mustard seed and talking about how it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is a donkey to get through the eye of a needle, which actually isn't an eye of a needle. It's actually some wall that's built, and how they have to crawl in. It's not very easy, but it's easier than a donkey in a real eye of a needle. But there's so many things that tell us that you cannot have your values, your priorities, be physical stuff, right? Again, I would say, if I broke it down into my language, you can't have one foot in your wants and one foot in heaven, right? You have to take care of your needs. But Luke 12:22 tells us that, the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, those are all taken care of. How much more important are we to God, right? So even then we can talk about God has given us the gifts to get our needs met. Oftentimes we tend to focus too much on our wants. And so two last things I want to kind of end with as I try to get under the 22-minute mark, because that's what's going to end up being, is that when I talked about the needs of others getting met, I talked about the people you're in relationships with. Here's the reality. For many of you, the people you're in relationships with are just like you. They look like you, they think like you, they act like you, they live near you, right? All of those kind of things. And I would just encourage you, if you have no one in your life that you could help meet their needs, not their wants, their needs, you need to diversify, right? Too many times the Christian world specifically hangs out with only Christians, right? That's it. They just have a bunch of Christian friends. No one thinks any differently than them. Whenever they meet non-Christians, it's normally in serving them. So they, quote unquote, stoop down to their level, those kind of things. The reality is that you should be in relationships with people not like you. That's the way we grow. That's the way we learn. That's the way we have experiences that we've never had before. But if your relationships, if the people in your sphere of influence look a lot like you and act a lot like you and think a lot like you, then that lack of diversity will continue to keep you in a position that you can meet your own needs. No one around you has needs that need to be met or really wants. And so you get to meet your own wants. So I would encourage you, if those people that you're in relationships, your therapeutic web all thinks and looks and has similar experiences as you, it's time to diversify. COVID will make that difficult. But in general, life will make that difficult. Because I think the reality is the two biggest things that get in the way of our priorities and having healthier priorities are these two things. Again, especially in America, because that's where I live and that's where I'm from and that's what I grew up on. The reality is I think the two biggest things that keep us from having correct priorities are comfort and pleasure. Now, don't get me wrong. I think God likes that we're comfortable at times and likes that we enjoy and things are pleasurable. Again, I already talked about food, but the reality is we've made comfort and pleasure our gods. I want things that make me comfortable. I want things that make me happy. And so then our job is all about getting us to our comfort and our happiness, getting us to our comfort and our pleasures, instead of finding joy in our positions, or instead of finding joy in learning from other people. Because here's the reality. Emmanuel Acho, who's a former NFL player, has a podcast. It's called Difficult Conversations with a Black Man, I believe is the exact title of it. Those conversations aren't comfortable. They're difficult. Or maybe it's uncomfortable conversations. I apologize if which one it is. But the reality is that those are conversations that is how we grow, right? If we're talking about lifting weights, I don't grow from just lifting the bar. It's in the struggle. It's in the things that are difficult that I grow and that I get better. And so I think when we talk about priorities, too many times, too many of us, including myself, have pleasure and comfort really high on our priority list. Even sometimes trumping our needs, right? I would rather eat something I like than something I need. It's a struggle. Right, listen, understanding your priorities and focusing on your priorities is going to be difficult. It is always difficult. For a Christian, we're fighting our flesh, but in America, we're fighting a culture that tells us, do what makes money, or do what you want, do what you love, where the reality is both ends of that spectrum can be dangerous. Now, there may be a few of you that love what you do and it makes you good money, right? It both meets your passion and your pocketbook, great. But in the end, if we start focusing our priorities off of what is comfortable and off of what is pleasurable and focus more on the needs of ourselves and others, we start to build the community around us. We start to build the people up around us. And it is in that as Christians, I am more likely to draw people to Jesus. It's not by telling them what I'm against. It's not about me telling them why they're wrong. It's by my love. It's by showing that my priorities are straight. So where are your priorities today? Again, you can always interact with me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller, JaredKMueller. But more so, do so with those people in your community. Ask them what their priorities are. Ask them what they think your priorities are. It's amazing what you might find out that other people think about you and what they think about themselves. So I hope you have a good Monday. We'll do this again next Monday. For now, have a great day and God bless.